The first warning came as a whisper of ionized particles and a sudden, violent rupture in the communication network. Colony Station Horizon drifted against the starlit backdrop, its hull breached and systems failing. Emergency protocols flickered to life, casting an eerie red glow across corridors filled with the last echoes of panic. Commander Sarah Williams watched the initial attack unfold through the fracturing holographic displays of the Emergency Command Center. Her fingers moved across quantum interface panels, gathering fragmented data streams that painted a horrifying picture. The Zorn attack was not just an assault. It was a calculated attempt to obliterate humanity's most vulnerable outpost. 12,000 colonists called Horizon home. Researchers, engineers, families who had ventured beyond Earth's solar system to build humanity's first deep space settlement. Now, they were nothing more than floating debris and rapidly cooling bodies. The Zorn had chosen their target with surgical precision. Horizon sat at the edge of human-controlled space, a strategic point that represented humanity's furthest reach into the unknown. Its isolation made it a perfect target, or so the Zorn believed. What the alien aggressors didn't understand was the intricate network of failsafes and emergency protocols humanity had developed. Each human colony, no matter how remote, was a node in a complex, adaptive communication system. As the station's primary systems failed, secondary and tertiary networks automatically began transmitting critical data. Inside the station's slowly depressurizing command deck, a team of researchers made their final stand. Dr. Marcus Chen, a quantum communication specialist, worked frantically to preserve the station's data core. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, transferring critical research, colony logs, and sensor data through quantum-encrypted channels that the Zorn couldn't begin to comprehend. "Transfer sequence initiated," he muttered, his voice calm despite the chaos surrounding him. Oxygen levels dropping, hull integrity failing, but the data would survive. Back on Earth, the first reports came through. The quantum communication network lit up like a nervous system, transmitting fragmented but critical information. Within moments, global defense networks began processing the data, analyzing every microscopic detail of the attack. In the Central Command Center beneath Geneva, a team of international specialists worked with machine-like precision. No single nation controlled the response. This was humanity's collective effort. Quantum computers processed terabytes of information per second, building predictive models, analyzing attack vectors, and preparing potential response strategies. Commander Williams knew this was more than just an attack. It was a message. The Zorn believed they could strike with impunity, that humanity was too scattered, too young to pose a significant threat. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The colony's final moments were captured in a series of data packets. Sensor logs showed the Zorn ships, massive, predatory constructs that looked more like living organisms than machines. They moved with a cold, calculated efficiency, destroying everything in their path. But even in destruction, humanity had left its mark. Embedded within the station's final transmission was a quantum-encrypted signature. Not a weapon, not a plea for help, but something far more dangerous. A complete map of the attack, every microscopic detail preserved and transmitted. The Zorn had struck first, but they had no idea what they had truly awakened. As the last of the Horizon systems went dark, a single message repeated across the quantum network. Short, precise, a promise more than a warning. Received. Analyzing. Responding. Earth was not going to let this attack go unanswered. The colony might have fallen, but the data it sacrificed would become the foundation of humanity's most precise and devastating response in galactic history. In the cold vacuum of space, among the cooling debris of the horizon, a small quantum beacon continued to pulse. A tiny, almost imperceptible signal that would soon become the first thread in a tapestry of retribution that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of humanity forever. The Geneva Underground Complex was humanity's best-kept secret. Carved deep beneath the Swiss landscape, it represented the pinnacle of human collaborative defense technology. Here, specialists from every corner of the globe worked in perfect synchronization, their minds connected through advanced neural interfaces that blurred the lines between individual thought and collective intelligence. Admiral Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of a massive holographic projection. Her dark eyes scanned the three-dimensional representation of the Zorn attack, each data point a universe of information waiting to be decoded. She wasn't just a military leader. She was a quantum strategist, a new breed of human commander who understood that modern conflict was won through information, adaptation, and unprecedented strategic thinking. Preliminary analysis complete, announced Dr. Camille Noack, the complex's lead data integration specialist. His fingers danced across quantum computing interfaces, pulling apart the attack with microscopic precision. The Zorn methodology is consistent with their previous engagements. Aggressive, calculated, but predictable. Predictability was a weakness the Zorn didn't know they had revealed. The complex buzzed with a controlled intensity. Hundreds of specialists worked in harmony, their neural interfaces allowing for near-instantaneous communication and data sharing. This wasn't just a military response center. It was the culmination of decades of human preparation for a moment many had hoped would never come. Deep learning algorithms began to map the Zorn's technological ecosystem. Every communication channel, every known technological signature was being analyzed, categorized, and potential vulnerabilities identified. The attack on the Horizon colony was more than a tragedy. It was an opportunity to understand an enemy that had dramatically underestimated human capabilities. "We're not just preparing a response," Rodriguez explained to her core team. "We're building a comprehensive strategy that will fundamentally alter galactic power dynamics." The team understood. This wasn't about revenge. This was about survival, about establishing humanity's place in a complex interstellar ecosystem. Quantum communication networks came alive. Satellites positioned across human-controlled space began collecting and transmitting data at speeds that would have seemed impossible just decades earlier. Each piece of information was a weapon, each data point a potential strategic advantage. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a specialist in xenotechnology, brought up a complex holographic model showing the potential weak points in Zorn technological infrastructure. Their communication networks rely on a centralized quantum entanglement system, she explained. It's advanced, but it has inherent vulnerabilities we can exploit. The room fell silent. Exploitation wasn't just a military term. It was a scientific approach to understanding and neutralizing a threat. Beneath the complex, massive quantum computers continued their work. These were not mere machines, but adaptive intelligence systems that could process and predict with a complexity that bordered on prescience. They were analyzing not just the Zorn attack, but potential future scenarios, building predictive models that could anticipate responses before they were even conceived. "We've been preparing for this moment for generations," Rodriguez said quietly. Her grandmother had been part of the initial deep space exploration teams, who understood that humanity's future lay in preparation, in understanding that space was not just a frontier to be conquered, but a complex ecosystem to be navigated with intelligence and respect. The neural interfaces allowed for something unprecedented, a truly collective human response. Specialists from different disciplines could share insights instantaneously, their thoughts merging into a singular, powerful strategy. Physicists worked alongside sociologists. Military strategists collaborated with communication experts, creating a holistic approach to interstellar conflict. "The Zorn believe they understand us," Dr. Noack said, a slight smile crossing his face. "They see a young species, scattered and vulnerable. They have no idea what we've been building." What they had been building was more than a defense system. It was a comprehensive approach to interstellar engagement that would redefine humanity's role in the galaxy. As the holographic displays continued to pulse with information, Admiral Rodriguez knew that the real war had not yet begun. The Zorn's attack on the Horizon colony was just the first move in a much larger game. A game humanity was more than prepared to play. The stars flickered against the backdrop of deep space, each pinpoint of light hiding potential secrets. In a small, unremarkable research station orbiting a nondescript moon, a team of human intelligence specialists began their most intricate mission. Dr. Maya Rodriguez adjusted her quantum encryption interface, her fingers moving with a precision that bordered on artistry. She wasn't a traditional spy or a military operative. She was a data architect, a specialist in xenosystems analysis who understood that true intelligence gathering was about pattern recognition, not just collecting raw information. First layer penetration complete, she murmured, watching as complex algorithms began to unravel the Zorn communication networks. The team around her worked in near-perfect silence, their neural interfaces creating a web of collective intelligence that could process information faster than any single biological system could comprehend. The Zorn believed their communication networks were impenetrable. They had spent millennia developing quantum encryption systems that they considered unbreakable. What they didn't understand was humanity's unique approach to problem solving, an approach that saw barriers as puzzles waiting to be solved. Deep in the Geneva underground complex, quantum computers began to map the intricate communication pathways. Each intercepted signal was more than just data. It was a piece of a larger puzzle that would ultimately reveal the Zorn's entire strategic infrastructure. "We're not just gathering intelligence," explained Michael Chen, the team's lead xenocommunication specialist. "We're building a comprehensive understanding of their entire social and technological ecosystem." The infiltration was subtle. Unlike traditional espionage, this was a multi-layered approach that attacked the Zorn's information systems from multiple vectors. Quantum-entangled communication probes, each smaller than a human cell, began to weave through the Zorn's communication networks. They weren't destroying anything. They were listening, learning, understanding. In orbital research stations, deep space listening posts, and quantum communication hubs, human specialists worked with a patience that would have seemed impossible to other galactic species. This wasn't about immediate gratification. This was a long-term strategy of understanding and preparation. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up a holographic display showing the intricate web of Zorn communication channels. To an untrained eye, it would have looked like chaos, a complex, incomprehensible network of lines and intersections. But to her team, it was a roadmap of potential vulnerabilities. "Look here," she said, highlighting a seemingly insignificant communication node. "Their entire administrative communication relies on a quantum entanglement protocol that has an inherent synchronization weakness." The team leaned in. What the Zorn saw as a strength was actually a fundamental flaw in their communication infrastructure. Humanity's approach to intelligence wasn't about brute force. It was about finding the most elegant solution. Across multiple research stations, teams worked in perfect synchronization. Linguists decoded communication patterns. Quantum physicists analyzed encryption methods. Sociologists studied behavioral models. Each discipline contributed to a comprehensive understanding that went far beyond traditional military intelligence. "We're creating a living map of their entire civilization," Michael explained to a junior researcher. "Not just their military capabilities, but their social structures, their technological limitations, their communication protocols." The junior researcher looked impressed. This wasn't just intelligence gathering. This was a complete systemic analysis that would allow humanity to understand the Zorn better than they understood themselves. As days turned into weeks, the amount of gathered intelligence grew exponentially. Quantum computers processed information at speeds that would have seemed impossible just decades earlier. Each intercepted communication, each decoded signal added another layer to their understanding. The true genius of the human approach was its adaptability. Traditional galactic species approached intelligence gathering as a linear process. Humanity saw it as a dynamic, living system, something that could be understood, predicted, and ultimately manipulated. By the time their infiltration was complete, the human intelligence teams had created something unprecedented. Not just a collection of data, but a comprehensive, living model of Zorn civilization. Every communication channel, every technological system, Every potential strategic move was now mapped and understood. The Zorn had no idea what was coming. They had struck first, believing humanity to be a young, scattered species. They were about to learn that humanity's true strength lay not in raw military power, but in its ability to understand, adapt, and respond with unprecedented precision. In the cold silence of deep space, the first phase of humanity's response was complete. The real strategy was just beginning. The first wave of humanity's response began not with weapons, but with pure information. Quantum algorithms, developed in the deepest research facilities of Earth, slipped through the Zorn's communication networks like ghosts in a machine. Commander Elena Rodriguez watched from the Geneva underground complex as the first stage of their strategic intervention unfolded. The holographic displays showed a complex, three-dimensional representation of the Zorn's technological infrastructure. Each node a potential point of vulnerability, each connection a pathway for intervention. Targeting primary communication hubs, announced Dr. Camille Noack, his fingers dancing across quantum interface panels. The room hummed with an electric intensity, a collective consciousness of human specialists working in perfect synchronization. The attack was nothing like traditional warfare. No missiles flew. No ships engaged in combat. Instead, humanity unleashed a wave of computational precision that would reshape the very foundation of the Zorn's civilization. Their first strike targeted the Zorn's quantum communication network. Carefully crafted algorithmic infections began to spread, not destroying systems, but subtly altering them. Communication channels became unreliable. Strategic databases developed microscopic inconsistencies. Entire administrative networks began to experience unexplainable glitches that would drive the Zorn's leadership to paranoia. "We're not destroying their infrastructure," Elena explained to her team. "We're undermining their confidence, creating uncertainty." Each algorithmic intervention was a work of art. Quantum encrypted packages of code moved through the Zorn systems, leaving no trace of their origin. They would alter critical data streams, introduce minute discrepancies that would grow like cancer through the Zorn's technological ecosystem. In their research stations, human specialists had spent years studying the Zorn's technological vulnerabilities. They understood that true power wasn't about destruction, but about strategic manipulation. Every system had a weakness, every network a potential point of intervention. Economic systems were the next target. Humanity introduced subtle distortions into the Zorn's financial networks. Trading algorithms began to produce unpredictable results. Investment patterns became increasingly erratic. The Zorn's supposedly impenetrable economic infrastructure started to show hairline fractures. "Watch the commodity markets," Dr. Yuki Tanaka called out, tracking the cascading effects of their interventions. "We're not crashing their economy. We're making it completely unpredictable." The brilliance of the human approach was its subtlety. Traditional galactic species believed in overwhelming force. Humanity understood that true strategic power came from creating systemic uncertainty. Communication networks began to fragment. Critical military communication channels developed unexplainable delays. Strategic databases started to show microscopic inconsistencies that would drive Zorn leadership into a state of perpetual doubt. "They won't even know they're under attack," Elena said quietly. "By the time they realize something is wrong, we'll have dismantled their entire infrastructure from within." Quantum computers continued their relentless work. Each intervention was calculated with mathematical precision, each algorithmic package designed to create maximum uncertainty with minimal detectable interference. The human team worked with a cold, calculated efficiency. This wasn't about revenge. This was about sending a message. Humanity would not be a passive victim. They would respond with an intelligence that would redefine interstellar conflict. As hours turned into days, the Zorn's technological ecosystem began to show signs of systemic stress. Communication became increasingly difficult. Strategic planning turned into an exercise of perpetual second-guessing. The mighty Zorn Imperium found itself paralyzed by an enemy they couldn't even identify. "Complete first-phase intervention," Dr. Noack announced. The room fell silent, understanding the magnitude of what they had just accomplished. They had struck a blow that would reshape galactic understanding of conflict. No ships had been destroyed. No direct military engagement had occurred. Yet the Zorn's entire technological infrastructure had been fundamentally compromised. In the cold silence of the command center, Elena Rodriguez allowed herself the briefest of smiles. The real response was just beginning. The stars outside seemed to shimmer with possibility, silent witnesses to humanity's most precise strategic intervention in galactic history. The Galactic Council chamber was unlike any other meeting space in known civilization. Suspended in a massive orbital station, its circular design allowed representatives from hundreds of different species to gather in a near-perfect representation of cosmic diversity. Holographic interfaces shimmered between delegates, translation algorithms working overtime to manage the complex communication. When the first reports about humanity's response began to filter through, the chamber descended into a silence so profound it seemed to have mass of its own. Representative Jorak of the Vexarian Confederacy was the first to break the silence. His crystalline form refracted light in complex patterns that betrayed his species' equivalent of shock. "This is impossible," he muttered, his translation matrix rendering the words in a dozen different linguistic structures. The holographic displays showed the cascading effects of humanity's strategic intervention. The Zorn's technological infrastructure was unraveling not through violent destruction, but through a series of precision interventions that seemed to defy conventional understanding of warfare. Eldest coordinator Lyra of the Quantum Collective leaned forward, her neural interface absorbing information at speeds that would have overwhelmed biological minds. "They have not destroyed," she observed. "They have systematically destabilized." Each delegate watched in growing disbelief. The Zorn, a species that had dominated galactic politics for millennia, was being dismantled not by force, but by an unprecedented form of strategic intervention. Humanity had transformed conflict into something entirely unrecognizable. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's image appeared in the council chamber, not as a military leader, but as a calm, analytical presenter. Her presentation was a masterclass in strategic communication. She didn't boast. She didn't threaten. She simply explained the systemic vulnerabilities that had been exposed. "Our intervention is not about destruction," she explained, her voice translated into 100 different communication protocols. "It is about demonstrating that technological superiority is not about raw power, but about adaptive intelligence." The representatives from older, more established civilizations found themselves struggling to comprehend what they were witnessing. This was not traditional warfare. This was something entirely new. The Quantum Collective's representatives were the first to fully appreciate the magnitude of humanity's approach. They recognized the intricate algorithmic interventions as a form of high-art strategic manipulation. Each code package, each quantum-encrypted communication, was a precision instrument of systemic disruption. "They have turned the Zorn's own technological infrastructure against themselves," observed the Vexarian representative. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not just responded to an attack, they had fundamentally reimagined the concept of interstellar conflict. Diplomatic channels began to light up across multiple communication networks. Species that had long considered humanity a minor, inconsequential civilization were now scrambling to understand this new player on the galactic stage. The most shocking element was the precision. Humanity could have utterly destroyed the Zorn. Instead, they chose a response that was surgical, calculated, and designed to send a clear message. "We are not victims. We are a species to be understood and respected." As the hours passed, the Galactic Council realized something fundamental was changing. This was more than a conflict between two species. This was a fundamental reimagining of interstellar engagement. Representative Jorak turned to the Quantum Collective's eldest coordinator. "They have changed everything," he said, his crystalline form shifting with complex emotional algorithms. Lyra's response was simple and profound. "They have shown us that true power is not about destruction. It is about understanding." In the vast silence of the orbital chamber, The representatives of countless civilizations watched as humanity demonstrated a form of strategic thinking that would reshape galactic civilization forever. The stars outside seemed to shimmer with possibility, silent witnesses to a moment that would be remembered for millennia to come. The data dump began quietly, almost imperceptibly. Quantum encrypted files started appearing in communication networks across the galaxy, each packet carefully curated, each piece of information meticulously verified. Humanity had done more than just gather intelligence. They had uncovered the dark history of the Zorn Imperium. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched from the Geneva underground complex as the first waves of information spread. This wasn't just about their own conflict. This was about exposing the systemic pattern of oppression that had existed for generations. The first revelations came from communications logs. Classified diplomatic exchanges revealed the Zorn's long-standing practice of manipulating smaller civilizations. Entire species had been systematically subjugated, their resources stripped, their cultural identities erased. What the Zorn had presented as galactic stabilization was nothing more than calculated exploitation. "We're not just presenting data," Elena explained to her team. "We're providing context, showing the complete picture." Communication channels across the galaxy lit up. Holographic displays in research centers, diplomatic compounds, and civilian information hubs began to show a comprehensive timeline of Zorn aggression. Each document was accompanied by verified source information, making it impossible to dismiss as mere propaganda. The evidence was overwhelming. Star systems that had seemingly voluntarily joined the Zorn Imperium were shown to have been coerced through economic manipulation, technological suppression, and carefully orchestrated political interventions. What appeared to be peaceful expansion was revealed as a calculated form of cultural genocide. Dr. Kamil Nowak managed the data distribution, ensuring that each piece of information was not just accurate, but presented in a way that would be comprehensible to multiple species. "Context is everything," he muttered, watching the information spread across galactic communication networks. Diplomatic records showed how the Zorn had systematically isolated potential resistance. They had created intricate networks of economic dependency, ensuring that smaller civilizations had no means of challenging their authority. Technological advancements were controlled, shared sparingly, used as tools of manipulation rather than progress. The most damning revelations came from recovered communication logs. Internal Zorn diplomatic messages revealed a coldly calculated approach to galactic dominance. Species were categorized not as living civilizations, but as resources to be managed, controlled, and ultimately exploited. "Look at this," Dr. Yuki Tanaka called out, highlighting a particularly egregious communication. A high-ranking Zorn official had described an entire species as resource management units, not even acknowledging their sentience. The information spread was carefully managed. This wasn't about creating chaos. This was about providing a comprehensive, verifiable account of systemic oppression. Each document was cross-referenced, each claim supported by multiple sources. Smaller civilizations that had long been silent began to find their voices. Communication networks that the Zorn had believed were completely controlled suddenly became channels of resistance. The carefully constructed facade of galactic stability began to crumble. "We're giving them more than just information," Elena explained during a strategic briefing. "We're providing the context for resistance, showing them that they are not alone." The quantum communication networks became a lifeline for oppressed civilizations. Information that had been suppressed for generations suddenly found a way to spread. Cultural histories that had been systematically erased began to resurface. As the days passed, the galactic landscape began to shift. The Zorn's carefully constructed narrative of peaceful expansion was revealed as a complex system of manipulation and control. Species that had been considered protected were shown to be systematically oppressed. The human approach was surgical. They didn't just expose the Zorn's atrocities, they provided the tools for other civilizations to understand and resist. Each piece of information was a potential spark of resistance. Each revealed truth, a weapon more powerful than any traditional military technology. In the cold silence of the research complex, Elena Rodriguez understood the true nature of their response. This wasn't just about defending humanity. This was about creating the possibility of a more just galactic civilization. The stars outside seemed to shimmer with a new possibility. The possibility of true freedom. Deep beneath the Swiss mountain range, in a facility that existed between reality and theoretical possibility, humanity's most extraordinary technological achievement hummed to life. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. No missiles, no destructive energy arrays, no massive battleships. This was something entirely different. Dr. Marcus Chen adjusted the quantum entanglement interface, his movements careful and precise. Years of research, decades of theoretical development, and generations of human innovation had culminated in this moment. The quantum resonance network was more than a technological achievement. It was a fundamental reimagining of interstellar communication and strategic intervention. Initialization sequence beginning, he announced, his voice calm despite the magnitude of what was about to happen. The facility was a marvel of human engineering. Quantum processors created intricate networks of communication that defied traditional understanding of space and time. Thousands of microscopic quantum nodes, each smaller than a human cell, could simultaneously interact across multiple star systems with instantaneous precision. Admiral Elena Rodriguez watched the holographic displays, each projection a complex three-dimensional representation of potential strategic interventions. This wasn't just a weapon. It was a living, adaptive system of communication and potential action that could analyze and respond to complex scenarios faster than any biological or artificial intelligence in the known galaxy. We're not just creating a communication network, Elena explained to her core team. We're developing a system that can predict, analyze, and respond to complex scenarios before they even fully develop. The quantum nodes worked on principles that would have seemed like magic to previous generations. They could simultaneously exist in multiple states, analyze potential outcomes with unprecedented complexity, and create intervention strategies that went far beyond traditional military thinking. Dr. Yuki Tanaka brought up a complex projection showing the network's capabilities. "Watch this," she said, her fingers moving across the quantum interface. The holographic display began to show multiple potential scenarios, each branching into increasingly complex potential outcomes. The quantum resonance network could do something unprecedented. It could analyze entire civilizational systems, predict potential conflicts, and develop intervention strategies that went beyond simple military action. It was a tool for understanding, for prevention, for creating the possibility of peaceful resolution. Our goal is not destruction, Dr. Chen explained during a strategic briefing. Our goal is to create a system that can prevent conflict before it begins. Each quantum node was a marvel of human engineering. They could communicate across vast distances instantaneously, analyze complex systems with unprecedented depth, and create intervention strategies that considered not just military potential, but cultural, economic, and social complexities. The facility buzzed with a controlled intensity. Specialists from multiple disciplines worked in perfect synchronization. Quantum physicists collaborated with sociologists. Communication experts worked alongside cultural anthropologists. This was a truly interdisciplinary approach to interstellar strategic thinking. As the system came fully online, something extraordinary began to happen. The quantum nodes started to create a living map of galactic interactions. Communication networks, economic systems, potential conflict zones, everything became part of an intricate, constantly updating model of galactic dynamics. "It's learning," Dr. Tanaka said quietly. And indeed, the system was developing its own methods of analysis, creating intervention strategies that went beyond its initial programming. The Zorn had believed they understood technological superiority. They had no concept of what humanity had developed. This wasn't just a communication network. This was a living, adaptive system that could understand, predict, and potentially prevent complex interstellar conflicts. Admiral Rodriguez understood the true nature of their achievement. This was more than a technological breakthrough. This was a fundamental reimagining of how civilizations could interact, understand, and potentially resolve conflicts. As the quantum nodes continued to pulse with extraordinary potential, the stars outside seemed to shimmer with a new possibility. A future where understanding could replace conflict, where intelligence could prevent destruction. Humanity had created something unprecedented, a weapon of such extraordinary sophistication that it defied traditional understanding of conflict and resolution. The orbital conference center hung against the starlit backdrop, a testament to humanity's newfound role in galactic diplomacy. Representatives from hundreds of civilizations gathered, their collective anticipation creating a tangible energy that seemed to vibrate through the station's quantum-reinforced walls. Admiral Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of the massive circular chamber. She wasn't there as a conqueror. She was there as an architect of a new possibility. "We are not here to replace one system of control with another," she began, her voice translated simultaneously into hundreds of communication protocols. "We are here to create a framework for genuine cooperation." The terms humanity proposed were revolutionary. Not a punitive approach against the Zorn, but a comprehensive restructuring of galactic diplomatic and economic interactions. The quantum resonance network would become a shared resource, a tool for preventing conflicts before they could begin. Dr. Camille Newick had spent months developing the diplomatic framework. It wasn't about punishment. It was about creating systems of mutual understanding that could prevent the kind of systematic oppression the Zorn had practiced for millennia. The first principle was radical transparency. All diplomatic communications would be archived in a quantum-encrypted network accessible to all participating civilizations. No more hidden negotiations, no more backroom deals that could destroy entire species. Economic systems would be redesigned to prioritize ecological sustainability and cultural preservation. The Zorn's model of resource extraction would be replaced with a collaborative approach that recognized the intrinsic value of each civilization's unique contributions. "We're not creating a new empire," Elena explained during a critical briefing. "We're creating a framework for coexistence." The Zorn Imperium was systematically dismantled, not through military force, but through a precise intervention that exposed their systemic corruption. Their technological infrastructure, once a tool of oppression, was carefully redistributed to the civilizations they had previously controlled. Smaller species that had been marginalized for generations suddenly found themselves with unprecedented opportunities. The quantum communication networks humanity had developed became tools of cultural preservation and mutual understanding. Dr. Yuki Tanaka oversaw the initial implementation of the new galactic framework. "This is about more than political restructuring," she told her team. "This is about creating a new way of understanding each other." The most radical proposal was the establishment of a truly collaborative galactic research network. Scientific discoveries would be shared openly. Technological advancements would be developed collaboratively, with strict ethical guidelines that prevented potential misuse. Representatives from the Quantum Collective were the first to fully embrace the new framework. They recognized that humanity had done something unprecedented. They had transformed a moment of conflict into an opportunity for genuine evolution. The Zorn leadership, once masters of galactic manipulation, found themselves completely neutralized. Their systems of control had been systematically dismantled, their hidden atrocities exposed, their technological superiority revealed as a complex illusion. But this wasn't about revenge. This was about creating a new possibility. The quantum communication networks became channels of cultural exchange. Species that had been isolated for generations began to share their histories, their scientific discoveries, their unique perspectives on existence. Admiral Rodriguez understood the true nature of their intervention. They hadn't just responded to an attack. They had created a framework for a more just and collaborative galactic civilization. As the conference continued, something extraordinary began to happen. Representatives from species that had been enemies for generations began to find common ground. The tools of conflict were being transformed into tools of understanding. The stars outside seemed to shimmer with a new possibility. Humanity had shown that true strength wasn't about destruction, but about the capacity to understand, to adapt, to create possibilities that no one had previously imagined. A new chapter in galactic civilization was beginning, and humanity had become its unexpected architects.